Hi everyone, I'm Kylie Bell from Investment New South Wales, based at the moment right in Sydney. So before I begin today by introducing our very esteemed panel, in the spirit of reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are joining us here today. So Investment New South Wales is a new central agency based in Sydney, across the state of New South Wales and actually across the world, that will make life easier for the private sector by consolidating all of our government's trade and investment attraction activities into one place. We're about marketing Sydney and New South Wales on the world stage, making it a great place for businesses from across Australia and around the world to grow, and of course, attracting global events, tourists, international students, and fantastic talent from around the world to come locate here and thrive. So our topic today is showcasing Sydney's fintech ecosystem and a view from the industry. According to the 2021 EY Fintech Australia census, Australia's fintech ecosystem saw record investor capital, strong job creation, and a growing focus on international expansion during the pandemic. So in some ways, the last 18 months has been kind to our industry. In the startup world, there is a well-known saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far together. So it's with that in mind that we have assembled today's panel of Sydney-based experts to share their experience on how to connect, collaborate, innovate, and ultimately succeed, not just here in Australia, but on the world stage. So I would like to start by introducing each of our panel members. First up, based on who I can see on the screen, Ms. Catherine Lyle, who is the Non-Executive Director for FinTech Australia, Ms. Kylie Davis, the founder and president of PropTech Association Australia, Mr. Steve Ballas, the CEO of Blockchain Australia, Ms. Deborah Young, the CEO of the RegTech Association of Australia, and Ms. Simone Dossiter, the CEO of InsurTech Australia. So as you can see, we've brought together the entire ecosystem from not only New South Wales, but across the country to talk to you a little bit today about their industry groups, how they support industry, and importantly, how they might be able to support you as you look to Australia and Sydney as a market. So I might start in the order that I've just introduced everyone. But I might start by asking Catherine, our first panelist, to tell us briefly about your association and your role there. And can you also share with the audience and some information on some of your members or technology or service we may have used from one of your members? Is Catherine there? Oh, Catherine, I think you're on mute.
I apologise.
The phrase of the last 18 months.
Apologies, everybody. Thanks very much. As you say, I'm here to represent FinTech Australia. I'm a non-executive director on the board, and I was appointed to the board because I also have a lot of strong international experience, having spent 18 years in the UK, the last 5 of those in the FinTech ecosystem there. So it's been very nice to be able to not only use the bridges both ways, but be part of ecosystems on both sides. So FinTech Australia was founded in 2016 here in Australia, and it came about because some FinTech founders went to the UK to promote their businesses and see what was happening in the ecosystem there, which is, 4 or 5 years ahead of ours as far as its evolution. And they got to meet the Innovate Finance team, which is the equivalent industry body there, and realised what inspiring work they were doing for the ecosystem, and came back and resolved to set up something similar here. So it was very much an industry-led industry body. It was created to enable a unified voice for the ecosystem here in Australia, because unlike, say, London, where it's a fairly cohesive ecosystem, we're very spread geographically across states. And so having a very universal voice to government, to business, to whomever, was really, really important. And so We're very, very strong on policy advocacy and have been very much a part of all the Senate inquiries and Treasury inquiries. And we have an EY report we put out each year on fintech, which covers many of the silos and many of the other areas my esteemed colleagues here will talk about later. We do a lot around thought leadership, very much about networking and connections for international companies looking to come down here and people looking to come here. We've pulled together sessions with all the regulators around the table at one time. We do these digitally. So really trying to provide access to the key areas that you need to know here in Australia. A lot of support. We have a lot of corporate partners, and we have 2 massive events each year. So we have over 400 members at FinTech Australia. Some of the big names you would know, for instance, BNPL giants like Zip and Afterpay are members. Some big homegrown winners, Athena Home Loans, Prosper, Bright, Air Wallets, and some really great international members like PayPal, Stripe, Square, Chain Analysis, TrueLayer, Mambu, Railsbank. We've got a really diverse group of membership, and that's brilliant, not just for our domestic people, but also for international, just bringing those ecosystems together. We all learn and develop from each other, but it also means that we get to hear what's happening offshore very, very quickly. My role as a director, and especially with that international experience, is to really help FinTech Australia grow in its purpose, bringing that UK experience and having been through a lot of the early steps. We've done a lot to try and help advocate with government, both federally and state, to introduce programs that are really supportive, not just for the companies, but for the founders, whether that be tax structures and grants or funding for the early stage ecosystem, even things around knowledge transfer between universities and the ecosystem, and especially with skilled resources. So I might stop there if that's okay. We've got a lot we do, but we're happy to unpick more of that as we talk through the next hour.
Thanks so much, Catherine. 400 members is a fantastic signal to the world, I think, about the strength of capability, not just in Sydney, but across Australia, and also international interest in what's happening here. I might pass to Kylie Davis next to introduce the PropTech Association. Kylie, can I pass to you?
Sure thing. Thanks very much, Kylie. So I'm the founder and president of PropTech Association of Australia, and we started just back in February 2020, just before the pandemic kind of rocked everyone's world. We cover the full spectrum of PropTech, and to give you an idea of how much that has grown since 2012 to 2020, global investment in PropTech increased over 5,700%, and we haven't quite seen that much money come into it in Australia yet, but we are very hopeful. But we have seen an extraordinary interest in the sector, and we kind of feel like we're a little bit behind. That fintech are ahead of us in the curve, but property is Australia's favourite asset class as Australians, and there's an enormous amount of tech, and in the last sort of 5 to 6 years we've seen this upsurge in innovation and interest in the sector. We have just over 100 paid members, which is not bad for our first sort of 18 months. We only started taking paid members in July this year, but we've already managed to host a major, our PropTech Awards, which we hosted in May, and our first 18 months has been spent bringing together our board, creating the foundations of a good association, and working on what our agenda is going to be. But our goal is to, most of our members are in the B2B space. So they are providing technology businesses that provide solutions to either real estate agents, the property industry, facilities management, or the construction and building side of it. So it's that full spectrum of property and built environment, any way that we buy, sell, rent, manage, lease, design, conceive, plan property and real estate. Our goal is to help everyone understand who's who in the zoo and what that property PropTech ecosystem looks like, and to encourage good adoption of innovation and technology, because on one end of our spectrum, our members' client base is SMEs in terms of real estate agents, so they're small businesses, and they have a very different dynamic to the PropTechs that are working in that commercial space that have got, you know, a longer time frame of a longer sales cycle and are working with the bigger end of town. But the conversation generally is around what can innovation achieve for us in our businesses? What does good adoption look like? What kind of solutions are out there that we should be looking at, and what does the future hold, and how do we bring that together? So far we've been doing monthly webinars on different prop tech concepts, and just trying to and starting to create those really important relationships to support our members and to grow that property ecosystem and help everyone realize that the pie can be bigger.
I would imagine not just domestic potential there, but huge international opportunities for prop tech organisations. Obviously, property is a global asset, not just an Australian asset, and
Absolutely.
so that's fantastic. Thanks so much, Kylie. Steve, I might pass to you now just to talk a little bit about Blockchain Australia and the work that you do across the country and internationally, and who some of your members are.
Sure. Thanks, Kylie. CEO Blockchain Australia, we're the peak industry body for all things blockchain, digital asset and cryptocurrency. We're a subject matter that a lot of people are currently showing interest in, having not shown quite the same interest over the last 5 years. I'm welcoming everybody to the party. We've been saying for a long period of time this is going to impact many of the things you do in day-to-day business life. And at the other extreme, all sorts of fanciful notions, exciting acronyms like DeFi, sort of taking over people's day-to-day world. As an organisation, we tend to do two things that we focus in on as best we can. One is to advocate for the businesses that are in the space or seek to be in the space. And the other is to elevate those businesses, to create noise, to bring them into the light. The tendency that I find in this sector is a lot of people are building, and you tend to build all the time. No one sees who you are, they don't see what you're doing. So we say that it's always an interesting balance there. That is build, but be seen doing these things, get the recognition that you deserve in relation to it. Our membership base is best described as diverse. And the reality is we have startups, we have education institutions, we have the big end of town consulting firms, we have builders in the tech space. So I have to say it's an extraordinarily interesting conversation to be involved in. And the key thing that's happening in the space at the moment is the building of confidence. Australia moved early in this sector and they slowed a little bit, which wasn't atypical in the space. There were lots of characterizations of what the space was or wasn't. And I think people formed views pretty quickly. And I think in recent times, particularly given the weight of interest internationally, people are revisiting those views and doing so in a positive way. I think we're now talking about trillions of dollars being invested in this ecosystem off a standing start. So right now, my fun day-to-day job is I talk to a lot of people. I think I've spoken to well north of 3,000 people in the first 17 months of this role, which sounds crazy because it is. But it's been great. I get to understand people's context. So anything to do with blockchain, crypto and the like, any room we can be in, we're trying to let people know what it is and let them carry their own view forward and try to build out the ecosystem that way. So that's the TLDR, Kylie.
Okay, fantastic, Steve. And I imagine those 1,300 or 13,000 conversations have been enormously interesting and no doubt kept you busy. Our next presenter is Deborah Young, and I'd like to invite Deborah to just give an introduction to RegTech Australia, your members, and perhaps some of the services you provide and things that you've seen emerging from the sector over the last 12 months.
Thanks very much, Kylie, and thanks. It's great to be here with this esteemed panel. So the RegTech Association was established in 2017 as a non-profit industry association, and two clear goals that we've had since the outset, and one of those has been accelerating the adoption of RegTech, and the second one was to really create a global centre of excellence, because RegTech, we believe, it's not a country-specific range of technologies. This is born global, and it's a range of global technologies with global applicability. And in fact, if we look at Australia, as a centre, we can offer, fantastic opportunities for people coming here. It's a very mature RegTech environment that you'll find, but there's also fantastic opportunities for us to help promote Australian RegTech companies going elsewhere. And for those of you that don't know, Australia actually has the third largest pool of RegTechs in the world. So behind the US and the UK, we punch well and truly above our weight here in Australia. So it is a very mature environment. We were really born out of a dysfunction that existed in the community. And that was, there was no easy way for regulators, institutions like banks, the government, and RegTech vendors to come together to surface the opportunities that there were in RegTech and to actually address some of the great challenges, regulatory and compliance challenges. And there was no easy way for them to do that. So the association was established in order to bring all of those parties together. And we do what we do via a range of programs that we run. So we offer regular free showcase programs, which allow institutions to come and window shop from a distance and see the potential opportunities of what RegTech could do for them. And we do that along the lines of a RegTech taxonomy that we have developed. And this global taxonomy helps people understand the different risk areas of RegTech and be able to search more effectively if they're looking for a particular vendor, for example. So we run those programs. We also, like many of my colleagues here, have an awards program, which is actually running right now. We also run an annual conference, a global conference. We're hoping to attract about 1,500 people to next year's conference. And to show you some of the movement and the development of RegTech, we are seeing very clear signs from the industry that the appetite is far greater because the digital transformation that's currently happening within institutions is far greater. The regulatory fines have never been higher. The cost of compliance has never been higher. And so this is this perfect storm coming together where institutions have a huge appetite to look at RegTech to bring them productivity, efficiency, but also to equip their teams with real tools that can help them surface the risks earlier and get more transparent real-time information to people. And the beneficiaries down the stream to that are actually consumers. So it's your mum, your dad walking around in the street, you know, demanding trust, which of course they should have. So we are seeing also clear trends that institutions are looking to buy rather than build. So probably 5 years ago, a lot of institutions were building their own solutions, bespoke solutions, which have now ended up being legacy systems, which create a bit of a challenge and a barrier to everybody. So we are now seeing clear signs that they're looking to buy. They've got bigger budgets to spend. So this is a very exciting time, I think, to be around RegTech right now.
Fantastic. I almost wish I was a RegTech company. You've sold me. Yeah, what an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that, Deborah. And Simone is our last panelist who we haven't yet heard from. Simone, can I ask you to introduce InsurTech Australia and perhaps to talk a little bit about your membership base and the trends you're seeing in the sector here in Australia?
Great, thank you, Kylie. Great to be involved. So I've only recently taken over the CEO role in InsurTech Australia since October. We're an organisation that also a not-for-profit member association that has been going since 2017, and we have about 80 members and also about 25 partners, which are, you know, some of the major insurers like QBE and Hollard. And our purpose is really about bringing and accelerating and building the InsurTech ecosystem and making it world leading. And that's very much been our focus. We run a number of events and really about connecting our members and our partners. That's been, you know, more online in the last 18 months, but certainly physical events are a core part of what we do. And we're having our first conference that we're running half day in February next year, which is going to be a really exciting chance to bring everyone back together in Sydney and really to connect people. We run a number of activities to help our members scale. So our members are very much around establishing their businesses, but then needing to go global. And we help them do that with Investment New South Wales and other businesses around how do they look to bring their products and their propositions to a greater market. So some of our members you may have heard of is Cover Genius, which has been very successful, particularly in the US, and has been part of the FinTech Festival. open, but we have, you know, a huge range of others that are everything from underwriting agencies with a technology solution to service providers and technology providers. So we work right across all the aspects of insurance, general and life, and also work with the brokers and the adjusters and all aspects of the chain, because it's very much InsurTech is very much around collaboration, and I think we're certainly seeing a lot of the insurers that were probably a little late to invest in technology. I think they could get away with manual processes and legacy systems, and now we're certainly seeing with globally a huge investment in InsurTech that they're really wanting to partner with our members and having a much more flexible offering, and that's a core part of what we do.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to move straight to the next kind of question. It's I feel like obviously now is an amazing time for the sector broadly. If I was to go to you, Steve, what do you think the next big thing will be in blockchain? And I might ask each of you for your particular sector, but in particular, what are the trends that we're going to see over the next 12 months? And perhaps conversely, what is the biggest challenge that you think your industry is about to face over the next 12 months at the same time? Steve, sure. If I start with you.
Yeah, sure. A little bit of our history and our present and our future sort of all bundled in together. Australia's interest has been largely around supply chains. A lot of the conversations we've had have been specifically related to supply chains, given how critically important it is to Australia as an exporting nation. We've also talked a lot about education and credentials and what that means. That's where we've sort of started. Right now, the world is telling us that financial services and digital assets are where the interest is, and enormous amounts of funds, VCs and otherwise, are flowing into a more traditional investor profile. So that's where we are today. Where we push off to in the short term, lots of conversations around things like decentralized finance, which is potentially reshaping most of these networks, you know, giving back into communities, creating different ways to coordinate communities. So that is the future. So of those three things, they're all interesting. They're all in play at the moment. The biggest challenges for us have been the kind of challenges that Deborah faces as well and seeks to address: regulation, reg tech, you know, compliance. This is an ecosystem that is being held back by the inability to give confidence to those that need those checks made. So regulation is the critical bit, but we're on a path towards greater certainty in the sector at the moment. And I've said to people consistently, certainty is not what we'll get. It's not the nature of innovative markets, but a little bit less uncertainty is what we need to encourage people to invest both here and abroad.
Well, I might pass. That's a good segue into Deborah, just to talk about what she sees as the next big thing in RegTech. And it's given the importance of compliance, not just to insurance, to financial services, to property as well. Deborah, can I ask you your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a great point to pick up on, because one of the things that's unique about RegTech is that it can be applied to any regulated industry. So whilst we've had our home and financial services, it can be applied across any range of different industries that you could think of. And significantly, one of the largest buyers, we've found a whole new market in government itself. So that's local government, state government, federal government can all use RegTech to get that productivity and efficiency, so to deliver a better deal for their citizens. So government is a whole new area, and I think it will be a significant thing for us going forward. One of the other things that I think is going to be significant for us as well is that we've heard a lot about ESG, or environmental, social and governance issues. And I think that there's a real opportunity here for RegTech from two perspectives. One is to sell the value proposition of RegTech along the lines of an environmental, social and governance lens. So really putting a different lens on that and offering to institutions an opportunity for them to look at technology not as a piece of technology, but as an enabler to help them achieve their own ESG targets and goals. And why that's also important for RegTech is that with the growing amount of professional capital now flowing into the sector, most small companies will need to have an ESG program of their own to meet the various requirements of investors. So I think government's going to be massive. I think ESG is going to be massive. The two greatest challenges for our industry right now is being able to attract talent and skills. And then the second one at a very practical level is, and the role that the association can play to help break down the barriers of procurement, because you need different vehicles of procurement for large businesses compared to much smaller businesses who will be very challenged if there's a lot of barriers put in their way just to get onboarded into an organisation. So from a practical level, it's probably procurement, but there's lots of opportunity right now, I think, around RegTech.
Yeah, again, you've convinced me. I think it's a fantastic story. Do you have examples of businesses in Australia that are moving into providing technology for that ESG space? Are we starting to see companies that are doing it well and are growing, I guess, a brand or a name for themselves in that space that we should allot the world to?
Well, I think we're starting to see it emerge, and now that we've started coming out using the ESG word, we are starting to see solution providers in that area come and contact us and say, how can we get involved? So I think it's still early days, and we're looking to kind of launch a bit of a program early next year. So watch this space, because I think it will do a couple of things. It'll stimulate appetite within the institutions, and that is the banks and other institutions. It will stimulate appetite in the RegTechs that we have within our community. And thirdly, it will stimulate appetite from companies who have solutions to help you manage your ESG programs. They'll want to be in the middle of all of that somewhere. So I think watch this space. It's very, very exciting. I mean, one of the things just really quickly is that we are seeing significant traction around, and this impacts everybody around this table and probably the audience, is workforce management solutions are part of the RegTech family. So that is how you onboard employees remotely. That is how you make sure that they're able to work and have the right credentials, that they have given you their tax file numbers and their superannuation information. They're managed through the life cycle, including their professional development. We can check their vaccination status and make sure that we are paying them correctly within the law. So that actually applies to everybody. So that's a new and very exciting part of RegTech as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Simone, can I pass to you now just to talk a little bit about the next big thing that you're seeing in the insurtech sector, and perhaps just talk a little bit about some of the challenges your industry is facing now. For example, during COVID, has the usage of insurance gone up and down, and is that impacting on the technology providers to the sector? It would be great to hear what trends you've been seeing over the last 12 months as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen a huge acceleration around digital adoption through COVID. So certainly things like using, remote assessing and using imagery, where traditionally people went out in the field and they went to the house and visited. That was not possible. So suddenly we saw a huge acceleration in take up of products that our members had developed and been waiting there for 4 years, and suddenly everyone wanted to bring them on board, and we're really seeing that continue. So very much more around using sensor data and imaging data, and then you needing the AI platforms and the machine learning to be able to make sense of that. And the insurers really have a challenge now, because there is so many different sorts of data that they can embed into both their underwriting and claims processes, and they need to kind of get on board to be able to use that. Otherwise, they'll be at a competitive disadvantage. So that's being a real benefit to our members. We're also seeing a big increase around the embedded insurance products, and really opportunities to make the customer experience so much better. I mean, we've all filled out those very long forms every time you want to change insurance, and that is such a sticking point. So really, where there's opportunities to make that much more user friendly, and there's definitely a lot more offerings coming, and probably more improvement there. In terms of challenges, I mean, I think the industry's been through a difficult time after the Haynes, and had to reflect and really look at what we were doing in a number of fronts, and really upgrade. And so that has probably then caused a challenge of how much are you able to do that, plus do the innovation and the technology things. But I think we're starting to come out of that now. And then probably the other thing, as Deborah had said, is really talent. And I think COVID has been challenging around, bringing talent in, particularly multinational companies, or, many of our members are, have people in various locations. So not having that ability to move people around and to visit, to expand, to go and see customers in other markets is certainly something that is been challenging.
Hopefully with borders opening now, we're about to see both an influx of talent and I guess us being able to go out to the world again.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I'm sure everyone is very much looking forward to. Catherine, can I pass to you now, just with your 400 members in FinTech Australia? I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this and what you're seeing might be the next big thing within the industry. And of course, no doubt with 400 members, they will also be giving you feedback on some of the challenges that the industry is facing right now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kylie. Look, first of all, I'd say, while Australia's got a small population, we've got a highly sophisticated financial services industry. Highly sophisticated, always has been, and we punch above our weight overseas, as do the people that work in it. And to Steve's point earlier about advocacy and elevation, I think that's collectively what we all do. And the diversity of the members we have at FinTech Australia means that we are constantly engaged across a whole range of areas, whether it be policy, whether it be interactions in the markets. And I for one, because I sit on several boards and invested in a lot of companies here, I have companies that are blockchain businesses in the PropTech sector, or RegTech businesses using AI and machine learning that are in insurance. So there's a lot of crossover between us all. So I would say we've got a really strong theme of partnership and collaboration as an ecosystem, Australia-wide. And as far as the engagement from our financial services industries, I agree with Deborah. I think there's been a big switch from building to buying, and there's an appetite to really help really strong Australian fintechs grow. From a next big thing perspective, I mean, we've been catching up and driving ahead of overseas in many ways around things in payments, in data rights. That's obviously been a big theme here. DLT and blockchains is a real push, and we're seeing that across many different sectors and silos, even including our agricultural industry, property elsewhere. We're changing the way that we interact with our money globally, and Australia is really starting to lead the way from a platform perspective and how we manage that. And I think platforms is going to be a real theme coming forward. And why I think it's interesting in this conversation in Sydney. Sydney's always been a financial services hub that has been a world leader in platforms, things like computer share and how you manage all your share portfolios that came out of Sydney. Warrants, products like warrants, technology to allow execution, really early days, built in the 1980s and used by the stock exchange and the futures exchange. So we have a strong history of innovation and trying new things. And we also have a really high level of individual share ownership in Australia. So that means we have a population that's open to using new technology, trying new things. And we're a great ecosystem to come into, both for retail and for businesses, to really try new stuff, test it and hone it. And I think that's a really strong thing. From the challenges side, because we're all facing different challenges, and I think COVID actually was a bit of a positive long term for us in the fintech ecosystem, because we've had a lot of people knuckling down. We've seen quite a boom. People really focusing, lots of focus on costs, lots of focus on revenue. People have got harder on their businesses. And while I would say we are all struggling with the cost of skilled resources right now, that is escalating phenomenally across all our business lines. That is a massive challenge for us. I also can see that there's moves by governments to start to improve that fairly quickly, and we do need to see that happening. Other than that, I think we've got a really strong early stage capital investment program. We've got good programs starting to come through. We're certainly watching our peers in Singapore and the UK to see what else we could do. We're all about trying to not just learn the lessons, but skip ahead. So I think from that perspective, we're doing a lot. And I do want to touch on ESG, because I think that cuts across many areas. I'd say economic quality and diversity is also a strong lens here for startups.
Fantastic. We have one more speaker, which is Kylie. Can I pass just to you? And I feel like you're the newest industry association, so I've left you to last, because I thought it would be interesting. In your introduction, you did touch on a lot of things that are already starting to happen in the prop tech sector, but could you talk a little bit about what you think the next big thing is going to be, and perhaps some of the challenges that your sector in particular is facing?
So thanks, Kylie. So the trends, so PropTech is a little bit different to the other industry associations here in that the majority of our regulation is actually at a state-based level. So a lot of the regulation that's driving the real estate sector, for example, is all state-based. It makes for a really interesting sector because our customers tend to prefer Australian grown technology because it's able to cope with that regulatory diversity, and it means that Australian PropTech is able to really adapt and expand overseas really quickly, because if you can cope with 8 different regulatory frameworks for selling or buying or renting real estate in Australia, then you can certainly cope with another 52 for the US or for other. You've usually got that scaled up inside your business. The key challenges that, or the trends that we are seeing at the moment, whether it's commercial real estate or design or build or residential real estate, is a lot in that data space. So the conversations that are being had are how data convergence, so data coming in from lots of different spaces, what you can do with that data, and the innovation that is fueling. Who owns that data, a really big conversation in the commercial real estate space, and how do you actually extract the most value out of that data to create better built environments, to create better user experiences, to create more frictionless experiences for the agents or for the people that are participating in that. Because the other big trend that we're seeing is around customer and end user experience, whether that is for the agents or the builders or the building users and tenants, or whether it is for buyers and sellers. And so we're seeing sort of this renewed emphasis on, the experience that you have buying the most expensive thing you will ever purchase in your life should not be a worse customer experience than spending $4.50 for a coffee down the road at your local barista. So we're seeing, that real emphasis on end user customer experience, and how do you make that frictionless? And that's like end-to-end transaction processing, from the time that you inquire about a property to the time that it settles, and bringing all of those parties together. What we're seeing in the built space and in the big end of town stuff, though, it really is around sustainability and ESG. And COVID sort of did us a huge favour in that as well, is that it's put this renewed emphasis that building is not just about environment, although that is deeply important, but built environments need to make us feel safe. They need to be healthy, and there is a lot of compliance stuff coming out of that. So we're seeing some really interesting innovation, and I personally believe PropTech will save the planet, because we are seeing such amazing stuff coming out of companies like Planet Arc Power, end-to-end stuff with Archistar. How do you design and conceive buildings, and even all the way down to touching into the RegTech space of why is council planning so painful and difficult, and how can we make that seamless so that the majority of things that require a council plan can actually be approved or rejected or informed by a bot, with things like with Udrew and Can I Build, and a whole pile of interesting tech going on in that space. And then we're seeing better end-to-end user experiences from buyers, for buyers, with things like Market Buy, Rezo, Open, some great technology coming out there. The challenges our members have got are similar to what everyone else has described: talent, finding great talent, funding, because we are still a fairly new industry, and so access to funding, security from the investor's point of view. Is this idea really going to fly? How do we build security around that? And data security, making sure that actually the data that we're sharing and privacy is all being is okay, and that people feel safe around how their data is being used.
Thank you. And I would imagine some of the members in some of the other associations here today might be able to help your members with some of that. But look, we're starting to move to the end of our session. So I thought the final question just might be around those that are on the audience today, perhaps talking to them a little bit about what your advice would be if you were looking to potentially set up your operations in Sydney or Australia. advice that you might provide an international company, but also a startup on the Australian market and the opportunities here. Because you're on my screen, Kylie, do you mind if I throw back to you to start this time rather than wait to the end, and then we might move our way backwards?
Sure. Look, well, I mean, I think the reason that you would want to start a prop tech or move your prop tech into Sydney is that Sydney is Australia's biggest, and New South Wales is Australia's biggest real estate market. It is, well, it is the sport that unites a nation, real estate. And so we are the centre of finance, the centre of funding. There's some fantastic accelerators and businesses that you can connect into, and everybody's in the kind of one space, so it's easy to network and connect up with everyone.
Thanks, Kylie. Thanks, Kylie. I hope I'm not on mute. I'm not. Good. I'm just double checking because I did put myself on mute. Steve, I might pass to you from a Blockchain Australia point of view. What advice would you give a foreign blockchain organisation looking to the Australian market, and what advice would you give an Australian startup looking to grow here and abroad?
I think, Kylie, it's important for everyone to know all the puzzle pieces are set largely for us. You know, we've got a very sound regulatory framework we've spoken about before. There's some uncertainty with respect to what this technology is, but everything is built on firm foundations. New South Wales is the place to build fintech businesses. It's the place to build innovative businesses. So the reality is we've got that historical record. The uncertainty will pass. It will pass everywhere. Every jurisdiction I speak to laments its own uncertainty. So it kind of says, once we all realise we're in the same boat, where do you want to be? And New South Wales is a terrific place to be with respect to investment. The inbound conversation is you're not crowding out these businesses here. I mean, we're crying out for these kind of businesses within Australia. So the fear is not you come here and you're competing. The fear is not enough people invest in New South Wales. So we're open for business with respect to that. And the flip side to that is we have talent here in Australia and in New South Wales, and they can stay here and still build global businesses. I mean, the reality is historically people have tried to own the relationships and own the headquarters and own everything. It's just not the nature of this technology now. These businesses are born global and they're bilaterally so. So from that perspective, it says we're ready to export to the world, and New South Wales is a great place to export from. And importantly, it's a terrific place to invest in.
Thank you, Steve. Catherine, given your broad range look from the fintech sector more broadly, what advice would you give someone considering to start up a business here in Sydney and New South Wales, or Australia? In fact, we're agnostic.
No, absolutely. So Fintech Australia, we've worked with companies coming both ways. We have a really strong partnership with Austrade, who are one of our government funding bodies for Fintech Australia. So we are a not-for-profit too, but we're funded both by government and private enterprise, which gives us a really good lens and also some really good access when we need to. So my advice would be, and I've done the bridges both ways, bringing companies down from the UK when I was based there and gone back the other way from here, is please understand the markets you're coming into, just as you would going the other way if you're a company going from Australia. There are plenty of places you can go to get that assistance. So Austrade is really stepping up and doing a lot to support Aussie companies going overseas and to support companies coming in from overseas into Australia. UK Department of International Trade has a fantastic program that's been operational for some time. And actually each of the state governments are now building some really strong programs. And it's not just focused on the cities, it's also out regional. I myself am sitting 2 hours out of Sydney regional, and I sit on boards for fintechs in Brisbane and Melbourne, as well as Sydney, and interact across the ecosystem. It's very easy to do. We've got NBN out here, we've got great coverage, and we have really entrepreneurial people sitting in, inside our cities and outside of it. So I would say connect with your industry bodies. You will find that many fintechs in Australia are members not just of Fintech Australia, but of also the areas where maybe it's prop tech or insurtech or blockchain or reg tech, because while at Fintech Australia we do a lot and we can be a great aggregator, the individual industry bodies also have those very laser-like focuses on the real issues in those industries and are great connectors within that ecosystem as well. So I'd say come on down, the water is warm and we have a really robust and evolving ecosystem. We might not be number one in APAC yet, but we are gunning for that position. And with some more support from our state and federal governments, we will get there.
Thank you, Catherine. So we're not number one yet, but we shall be. Perfect, perfect way to sum things up. So we've gone Catherine, Steve, Deborah. I'm not sure that I've passed you yet for this final question.
No, thank you, Kylie. So there's a couple of things I would say. Australia is a great place, as has just been said, and there's great programs run by Austrade, and they are also one of our supporters. But secondly, 67% of all of the RegTechs in Australia, or the I should say the ones that are members of our association, and we didn't cover off on that, we have 150 organisations, and more than 100 of those are RegTech companies, are actually right here in New South Wales. So you enter a really nice peer group of people, and you won't need to go around and explain what RegTech is. It is a mature environment. I would suggest to you to reach out to us, check out the research that we've already done for you to understand what the local environment and what the local market looks like. I think that's really, really important. And really, yes, the water is warm, the weather's great. What other reason would you need?
Deborah, when companies from overseas come in and are new to Australia, and maybe I should have asked this a little bit more from everyone as well, but what services can your organisation provide to them? Is it, introductions to, through networking events? Do you provide pitching sessions where they could introduce themselves to potential partners? How do you go about supporting, I guess, new members into the ecosystem here?
Yeah, well, we do a couple of things. So first thing is that we have a directory. And so that directory is free and open to anybody that wants to go and actually have a look. So you can actually look at who your competitors are. You can actually look at who else is and who's who in the zoo. And so that actually helps you have a bit of a soft landing when you do come here, because then we can help with that connectivity. So we run regular showcase programs. So people can come and present what it is, the problems that they solve, and the value proposition of their organisation. And then we run a whole host of other things. We're starting to do a lot more stuff in-house as well. So what you don't see advertised in public can often be programs that are now going to be run by the larger institutions in-house. And so we'll bring people in to do that kind of thing. But really, we're just a good port of call, and we have connectivity with all of our colleagues sitting here on the screen. But also we have MOUs with lots of global RegTech organisations as well. So we've really got that kind of global connectivity and the local connectivity covered. And so I always say, if I don't know the person, I'll know somebody who does know. And so it's just a great place. Reach out to us. We can help you, connect in with the right people, including the trade and investment people within each of the government agencies as well.
Fantastic. And then that takes me, I think, to Simone, just for you to sort of do a bit of a wrap up around both advice your organisation would give to either new startups looking to explore opportunities in Australia, or businesses wishing to move here. And perhaps you could also just talk a little bit about some of the ways you might be able to assist them in addition to why they would want to come here.
Yeah, certainly. There's certainly room for lots more new entrants, whether that's local or people coming in. And Sydney is very much, in Australia, is the heart of insurtech. So most of the large multinational insurers have their head office here, and the brokers. And certainly with the Stone and Chalk and all that support, the Real Startup Centre, there's definitely a majority of our people here. We also have a number of members that are internationals. Australia is a really attractive market to enter into the insurance industry. It's mature, it's regulated, and it's really a great place to kind of test and learn in that environment. It's not too big that if it fails, or if you need to pivot, that you've got a huge financial disaster in your hands. So we're finding that very much with our insurers, that they really want to try new things here. And for our local members, there is lots of room for further improvement. So really there is an opportunity to further improve the customer experience and the product. So I definitely encourage people to come along. We, like the other associations, have connection events, member education. Really, it's very much an ecosystem where more experienced members do want to kind of give back and also contribute and share their learnings with the newer members. And it's also very much an industry that everybody knows everybody. So it's very much around how do you have those connections. We're similarly part of a global InsurTech Alliance. So we have many sister organizations and also connections there. So it's very much around that individualized connections. We know, everybody and what they do. And if we don't, we can connect them. So we'd certainly say we should be a sort of first port of call if you're coming in, or if you're thinking about it. We're always kind of happy to chat.
Thanks, Simone. Catherine, is, I guess what I would say is probably one of the peak bodies with FinTech Australia and sort of 400 members, perhaps representing more broadly the entire sector. Could you talk a little bit about some of your key activities and events like Intersect and Finis, just so the audience here, if they are looking to perhaps visit Australia, one very good time to do that is around sort of a major event or some activities that you all might have in your calendars over the next 12 months. Catherine, could you talk a little bit about some of the sort of big events that FinTech Australia has planned coming up next year?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kylie. Really appreciate that. So just quickly, like everybody, we have a big flagship event, and it does draw all the sectors all under FinTech umbrella as well. It's called Intersect. It's an annual event. We managed to slip in an in-person one earlier this year, literally 10 days before lockdown happened. And 500 people showed up, which was pretty amazing over 2 days. It's a really significant event. It's a very much like the Innovate Finance event in London, where it covers all the silos. There are a lot of breakout rooms. It's very, very strongly represented at all the senior levels. And we have a lot of people coming in from overseas. It's a really great way to connect with the ecosystems, these flagship events that we all run. And I would encourage people to pitch travel around it. So we're in May next year for Intersect, but we also have the kind of industry awards as well, called the Finis, where we award 24 awards to companies, both emerging and kind of established in the fintech ecosystem, including in areas like InsurTech and PropTech. And they're really fun. Lots of people come to them. It's a bit more relaxed. It's very much about profiling and advocating and showing who the stars are here. And the other thing I was doing, you can connect digitally to all of us. We all host lots and lots of sessions, whether it be with regulators, whether it be with groups within our ecosystem, whether it be with entities like Ernst & Young that do an annual fintech review of our ecosystem in Australia. And you can get those reports from our website. So lots and lots you can engage with, lots of people, but definitely come for the events because it will really broaden your viewpoint of what's going on here.
And create some new and fantastic networks through being here, hopefully in person, but if not in person, at least virtually, so those connections can be made. Well, look, I feel like it might be time for me to start to draw a close to that. But what I would like to do is encourage, as you've heard, the ecosystem in Australia is incredibly rich. There's an awful lot of support available to businesses, both domestic and international, that are trying to work here. And what I would do is encourage all of our audience today, if you're not already working with these 5 great organisations here across Australia, that you use this opportunity to follow up with each of our presenters and talk a little bit more about how they could work with you, how they can support you, and how they might be able to work with you on the building blocks both here and internationally. So could I just thank Catherine, Kylie, Steve, Deborah and Simone enormously for spending time with us here today. I'm unsure how people might contact you, but I'm sure we can work that out. And I'm sure if you Google each person's organisation, that will be the most easiest and fastest way to get that done. Can I also encourage people that are here online to visit the New South Wales Government's e-booth at the World Fintech Festival virtual platform. And there you'll be able to connect with Janice, Katie and Tanya Panagoda. And I'm sure they will have the details of all of our fantastic presenters so that you can get in touch with them and learn more. But look, panel, thank you so much. And on that, I might draw this session to an end. with 3 minutes to spare for a bathroom break for the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kylie.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kylie. Thanks.
Everyone.